Assalamualaikum and a good greeting. So today I'll be watching a video by Ilyas Tan titled First Time I Read the Quran, My Thoughts. So this will be the first ever video by him that I will be watching. So without further ado, let's watch.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hi brothers and sisters, welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, I want to talk about me reading the Quran for the first time and how I actually felt. What was my first impressions of reading the Holy Quran. And the one I'm holding right now, this was given to me at the Muslim Converts Association of Singapore when I converted to become a Muslim. They had like a gift package, and there is a lot of other things. I showed that in one of my earlier videos, and this translated version of the Quran is one of the gifts inside the package, other than, you know, some prayer mat, the prayer cap, and other books as well. This is one of the gift, and I think this is one of the best gift. So this Quran, this is a Quran with the translation and commentary by Abdullah Yusuf Ali. I'm not sure if you guys can see that. I think you guys can. Abdullah Yusuf Ali. And I heard about this Quran, and I heard that this is one of the best translation and commentary of the Quran. So there is a lot of different translations of the Quran that is available.
So I'm wondering, because right now he have not yet go into when is the first time that he ever read the Quran, right? Because is it after he became a Muslim, because he is telling about the Quran that he's holding is the one that he received after he became a Muslim, if I understand it correctly. So was that the first Quran that he read? If that is the case, then it means that the first experience reading the Quran as a new Muslim, right, rather than prior to become a Muslim.
Out there, so I am reading this version. I have a few things that I want to share with you guys after reading the Quran. So the first thing that stood out to me was the language. I'm not sure if that is the right word, but I guess the way the language is structured, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the I guess the deep meanings behind each and every verse, right? There is like so many verses, and each of them, you know, there is a lot of meanings behind every verse and every surah, right? So I think the first thing that stood out to me was, if I don't have the English commentary on this Quran, right, it will be so hard to understand. Like even with the English commentary, right? Even with the English commentary, I think that's what I want to say. Even with the English commentary, it is already so hard to understand, right? So I guess it will take me quite a while to learn the Arabic, and also to understand, to be able to understand and read the Quran in its original and Arabic form, and to understand it. So I'll do my best, inshallah.
Inshallah. Now that is interesting, because I have seen before where I'm not sure what is the difference between because this Quran, I believe it's like you have the Arabic original, you have the translation, and you have also the commentaries, right? I believe that's the copy of the Mus'haf of the Quran that is, right? But I think in the US, when they say they read the Quran, it's just there are copies where it's purely in English. So I'm wondering whether that Quran in English is like a literal translation word by word, or it's already tafsir, right? It's already in the language that's easy to be understood. Yeah, because I have never opened one and read it for myself, but because I have seen on YouTube, for example, and other places where people actually say they read through those English copy of the Quran, right? So is it a direct translation word by word, or is it already having? But normally even translation have the commentaries as well already, right? Otherwise it will be like because there are things that you cannot translate word by word and still understand it correctly, right? So that's what I'm wondering, because he is saying here that even with the commentaries it's still difficult to understand fully, right? So that's interesting thing to hear.
And hopefully I'll be able to read and understand it in Arabic in the future. But that's the first thing. It is like a piece of literature that, you know, that is so deep and so hard to understand, and these are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so there is nothing like it, and this is the ultimate guide for mankind. The second thing that stood out to me when reading the Quran is that there is a lot of repeated signs and repeated stories in the Quran. I'm sure that there is some significance to some of the repeated stories, like I'm sure that there's that importance to it, that's why it is being repeated, but I'm not too sure about that. I will do further research on it, but this is just like my honest first impressions when reading the Quran. There is a lot of repetitive, not a lot, but there is like repetitive stories and repetitive signs from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third thing when reading the Quran that stood out to me was not only with the translation that is important and also the commentary, but also the context, right? So example, I will show you guys. So example, I'll open up to a page. This is Surah Al-Ra'd. This is the thunder, right? So as you guys can see, as you guys can see, there is
okay, so that's if you see on the left side there, there's the Arabic text, and then I think there's translation there, but here is basically the commentaries, right? The introduction. So it's basically like a tafsir book, but a brief one, I guess, right? If because in a tafsir book, this is basically you have the introduction, you have the background stories to help us prepared for understanding when this verses being revealed, what is the context, what is the issues that it is addressing, etc., etc. So we can understand better, right? Yeah.
There is the how you call that, the introduction of when this took place and what this surah is about, and there's also a summary right here. This is the summary of the chapter or the surah, I would say. So there is this, and I think this is really important. So because I think the Quran, when I was reading it, I don't think it is in any chronological order. So the chronological order or the time and the context that it took place, I think it is given at the start, like what I showed you guys just now, the explanation of the surah and also the explanation of what the summary is. So I think that is very important, because I think a lot of people online, when they talk about Islam, the bad things or whatever, when they take verses from the Quran, it is always out of context. Like I know that there is some surahs that is given in the context during the war in the battlefield, and so this has to be taken into context, and I think that is why context is really important also to understand when reading the Quran. So this is also what stood out to me.
Yeah, I think many people will not realize what Quran claimed to be, right? In the sense that how it claimed to be revealed, and hence the implication is that it is not just like how a book is written, right? And hence the context become something fundamental in that sense, right? But yeah, because that is the starting point, I think, because some people say no, when it is a book, it should be able to be understood even if you do not know anything else, right? Because when you write a book, it should be self-sufficient. Yeah, but I think that's where we have to go back to. When we analyze something, we have to start when what it claimed to be first, right? Because if it claims to be something, and then we judge it based on something else as a benchmark.
And the fourth thing that stood out to me is the fourth thing. The fourth thing that stood out to me was also in a lot of the places in the Quran when Allah Subhanahu wa Taala mentions about certain punishment for certain acts or certain wrongdoings, there is also the mention of forgiveness. That was also what stood out to me while reading the Quran. When people, online again, talk about the Quran and talk about the different verses and use it out of its context, they never use and read the whole verse or the next verse after it, right? And a lot of times in the Quran, when there is a punishment for a certain act, there is also Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, if this person repents, then forgive him, right? I'm not. This is not the exact words, but this is like somewhat. I think you guys understand what I meant. Like there is a lot about forgiveness in the Quran. If the wrongdoers repent, if they seek forgiveness, then forgive that person. And so this was also what stood out to me. Like it was not, the Quran is not as scary as what the internet says it was, if we understand the context of it and read the verses afterwards. And the last thing that's
I think that is where different people will get different things from the same text. And if we take the Quran, for example, right? Some people, when, again, this is online discussion and some people come to debate, right? When they say they have read the Quran, they mean different things. I've noticed this. Meaning that, because for example, when they say they are very familiar with a lot of Quranic verses, sometimes it's already, how to say, meaning someone else already gathered many different verses from many different surah in one pool, and then it make it to be seem that it is very much conclusive that all these verses, if you look at it, it must mean so and so and so, right? So when someone becomes very convinced, when they look, there's a lot of verses here, surely this is not far off from the truth, for example, something like that, right? So they think they have read the Quran, they claim to have read the Quran, but they only read certain verses, portion of the verses here and there being collected to form a narrative, right? So that's one thing. There's also people that actually read through the Quran but already have in mind what to seek for. So that's another thing. Yeah, but because it's very hard for me, especially when someone online says they have read the Quran, and when they come as if they are asking about certain verses, right? So when I ask, did you read the verse before and after? Right? Because if you actually read the Quran and one verses pops out as something that concern you, normally it's in the context of you have read the whole passage and then that still stood out and you want to understand what that means, right? Fair enough. But when they doesn't even seem to have read the verse before and after, I don't want to propagate that we have su'uzon, right? Like, no, that mean they didn't read at all, they just want to fight and debate. So I don't know, right? So because I assume if you actually read that one, you can go back and see what is the verse before and after saying, because some of those verses can easily be explained when you read the whole thing.
Stood out to me when reading the Quran for the first time was I guess the way of the structure of the Quran. Like the longer surahs are at the front and then the shorter surahs are at the back, and And yeah, that is basically what stood out to me as well, because when I was reading the Quran, like the first half of the Quran, I would say more than half, but the front, okay, of the Quran, it is a lot about the signs, the stories, and the warnings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the shorter surahs are at the back. It's not so much of stories, not so much of signs, but it's like more of a, I would say, like a direct message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not sure if that is the right word, but I think you guys also know what I mean. It's very hard to explain for me, but yeah. So a lot of stories at the front, and then not a lot of stories towards the end of the Quran. So that was my first impressions of how I felt when I actually read the Quran for the first time. I hope that you guys understand what I mean when I couldn't find the words to explain some of the things that I wanted to say. But yeah, it is a very deep book, and it's very hard to understand. So overall, that was my thoughts, my first thoughts when reading the Quran. Let me know what you guys think about my first thoughts. Hopefully I didn't say anything wrong, but yeah, that's it. So much for watching this video. I hope to see all of you in my next video, inshallah. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a nice day. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alright, so I have no context of how long have this brother actually become a Muslim, etc. So it's hard for me to understand, is he recently revert, and hence all this is recent as well. Recent meaning that he just read the Quran, etc., or this is something in the past, etc. Well, I will be looking forward to see more of other videos from him, I think. Yeah, the Quran is something that is interesting to discuss, I think, in the sense that how people approach in reading it, and because it makes sense that you read from the front until the back, right? And of course you will notice what he just said. The longer surah is the second surah is at the front, right? And so on, and then at the back is just short surah. But in terms of education, normally for children, etc., it's easier to understand the short surah at the very back. And then as well, those surah is the ones that were revealed in Mecca, right, at the beginning of Revelation, right? So chronologically, there's a logical, how to say, justification of why in education normally we start with the short surah first, right? Because that's easy to understand, straightforward, etc. But if you read the Quran from the beginning, like he said, it's stories, etc. So it's more of a journey that someone takes, right? Yeah, I think that is all that I want to say for this video. Hopefully, well, I will be looking forward to see other videos from him, inshallah. With that, we end the video and see you next time.